When I think about my favorite Witcher 3 quests, I think about the powerful emotional storytelling, the themes of human weakness and nastiness, and the nuanced shades of gray to everything. But what about the Witcher contracts? These are essentially just monster killing quests, so how do they stack up with other quests? Well, they stack up really well because you quickly see how in sync these are with the rest of the game, both tonally and thematically. And for an example of this, let's analyze the first contract you find in the game, the Devil by the Well. This quest can be found in White Orchard. Geralt comes upon a notice that directs him to Udalan, who is having some trouble. Geralt talks to Udalan, who tells him there is a cursed well north of town, and asks him to kill the ghost haunting that well. Geralt travels up north, investigates the area, and slays the specter, who turns out to be a Noonwraith. Now looking at this piece by piece, it feels like it could basically be any generic quest. Like, you talk to quest givers in any given RPG, so what makes a conversation with Udalan any different from any other conversation? Well, let's start with the fact that Udalan's motivations are driven indirectly by Nilfgaard's invasion.
Because earlier on we drew our water from the river, but so many corpses floating in it after the battle it's turned noxious. My daughter Mandy drank half a pitcher, fell dreadful ill, can't keep nothing down. Herbalist claims you fight a fever with drink. And where am I to get that if not from the well? But first, the ghost's got to be driven away.
And that's just brilliant. Rather than just have him tell you there's a ghost, his circumstances are completely intermingled with what's going on in the world of The Witcher 3. Makes things feel thematically connected. Like, this is obviously fantasy, but it helps it feel grounded and realistic. And that goes for Udalan's description of the specter as well.
Fresh from the grave. Wears a dirty dress, all rags, its skin flaking off its bones. And it howls like it's suffering.
In a lesser game, the quest giver would say something like, "Oh, there's a ghost and it's by that well and it's so scary, please go kill it." And that would be that. But this quest goes the extra mile of making that ghost feel like an actual part of this world. Udalan's words are so vivid, it feels tangible. Rather than describe how scared he is, you can feel the fear emanating from him. And there's also hints of sadness when he describes the Wraith. All of this manages to evoke an emotional reaction out of me, which I'm not really used to when dealing with these simple monster killing quests. But how would I not have an emotional reaction when there are beautifully composed shots like this one? But now it's time for Geralt to investigate the village where this well is located. And this is not the best example of Geralt deducing what monster is haunting a location. In my opinion, he figures it out a bit too quickly.
Grass around the well scorched. Bodies dried to a crisp. Signs of burns. All signs point to a Noonwraith.
Really, Geralt? All signs point to a Noonwraith? Sounded to me like both signs pointed to a generic fire. That part feels rushed. I would have liked a bit more evidence, but once he figures out the Noonwraith part, his actual investigation into what happened here has some good dialogue and attention to detail. It paints a very vivid picture of what happened.
Palm prints in blood. Small hands. A woman's. Someone dragged her out.
Again, the vivid descriptions and the weight of the words and the music makes everything feel thematically connected. And this goes for your bestiary as well. And you have two entries to look at. The general Noonwraith entry explains in detail what they are and what brings them about, while the Devil by the Well entry is more like a little lore entry about how this haunted well has impacted the people of White Orchard. There is some important information in here, mostly around what oils, bombs, and signs to use, but the best thing about these are how they continue to connect you to the world. Noonwraiths are described as spirits of young women who died violent deaths right before their weddings, and they are now driven mad by their pain, killing all who cross their paths. They are bound to a location, in this case this well, by an object of emotional significance. So if it wasn't clear yet, it should be clear now that this isn't just some monster for you to kill as a video game character. This spirit was a person. There is an emotional weight to the situation here that very few monster killing quests in other games can match. And that emotional weight is what thematically connects this quest to the rest of the game. The Witcher 3 is all about emotional weight, and that tracks for even these monsters that Geralt is paid to kill, including this specific Noonwraith. During his investigation, Geralt comes upon a letter that tells a tragic tale of Claire and Volker. Apparently, the two of them used to live at a lord's estate in the area, but once the lord started behaving erratically and violently, they found a way to leave and start their lives over in this village where they hope to live and love each other in peace. The lord sends a retinue to the village to ask them to return to his estate, which is the last entry in the diary. Geralt then discovers a murdered man near the journal and signs that a woman was dragged out of the house. This leads him to the haunted well, where it's revealed that Claire was hanged.
A corpse, hanged by the bucket rope. Woman the journal belonged to.
And while it's nothing special to have a dark backstory, the way CD Projekt Red interweaves this tale with optional portions of the main quest is incredible. While doing the Beast of White Orchard quest, you can talk to the hunter Mislov, and in a bit of dialogue that you can easily miss, he tells you this.
Usually a simple curse.
The Lord's son, Florian, and I, we loved each other. Dieter walked in on us in the stables. They drove me away. Florian hanged himself. Lord started drinking, and the estate fell into ruin.
So that's a cool little detail. It fills in a very human context for why the Lord ended up driving Claire and Volker out in the first place. But there's more. If you talk to Tamara the herbalist about Claire after completing this contract, you learn this.
The only person dear to me in all of White Orchard. Until her husband Volker quarreled with the Lord of the Manor. He then gathered the family, moved out into the woods to start a new settlement. The Lord and his retinue rode there to convince them to return. They were to be civil. No forcing, no bloodshed, but you saw. Word is Claire said something about the Lord's son, Florian.
Wow. If you didn't have these optional conversations, the actual story of Claire and Volker leaves out a motive for the Lord. Like, we don't actually know why they died. And while the story works perfectly fine without that, like, we chalk it up to humans being humans, to learn the background of what happened exactly in these completely optional conversations, it's fantastic. But I think you guys have heard enough about the writing. Let's talk about the gameplay and how that fares when you're dealing with this Noonwraith. Well, part of killing a Noonwraith is destroying the item that binds them to the area. Geralt discovers that this is a bracelet when he finds Claire's skeleton hanging in the well.
Wide pelvis, small jaw. A woman. Around 30, judging by the teeth. Left arm's missing. Was she wearing the bracelet from her husband? Might be why her arm fell off. Gotta jump down there. Hope I don't break my legs.
Wow, Geralt, you're worried about breaking your legs, but you're not actually worried about how you're gonna get out of this well? And this is like a fundamental thing I hate in video games. Characters are so gung-ho about jumping into things like wells or ruins where there's no obvious way of escaping, which I get, it's a video game. But it still bothers me that Geralt doesn't bat an eye at the idea that he might be unable to ever escape this well, save for the fact that this is a video game and there's always a way out of things. But whatever, Geralt returns to the village with the bracelet and burns it, and Claire the Noonwraith makes her appearance. As you can see, the visual design of her is fantastic, and knowing what we know about Claire and Noonwraiths and the tragedy that surrounds them, this hideous monstrosity ends up looking pretty heartbreaking. And then we've got some combat, and this is a fun fight, especially early in the game when you haven't fought something like this. I enjoy that you kind of have to use Jurden, or else you can't actually damage her. It makes you feel like you have to know your enemy to defeat them. It makes you feel like a Witcher. And she's tough. She hits hard, she can blind you, and when you damage her, she splits into multiple spirits and starts leeching your health to heal herself. So it's a fun, challenging fight. I know when I first played the game, I died many times. I didn't die this time, but I still enjoyed this one, and this is coming from a guy who doesn't think the gameplay in The Witcher 3 is all that great. But all that's left once you kill the Noonwraith is to go back to Udalan for your reward. You have one decision to make here, whether you take the reward or you graciously let Udalan keep it for his daughter. Now, the one thing that this quest lacks that The Witcher 3 does so well, and I love it so much for, there are no moral dilemmas here. Yeah, you can choose not to take Udalan's money, but what the hell does that matter? His name is Udalan. I don't care about him.
My daughter Mandy drank half a pitcher. Fell dreadful ill, can't keep nothing down. She grows worse by the day.
Fine, I care about him, but it's still not a life-altering decision.
Your reward, Master Witcher. The gold I'd hid away for Mandy's dowry.
Okay, fine, it is life-altering. She gets her dowry paid for. But my point stands that there aren't really any moral dilemmas here. But you know what? It doesn't bother me here because the writing in this quest is nearly perfect. And I also think that it was kind of intentional by CD Projekt Red. Almost all the other side quests in White Orchard have them. And I think it's kind of refreshing to have a quest like this that's a little bit more simple. But notice I said nearly perfect writing because my one actual complaint is this line from Udalan, should you take the payment.
How about that? Never expected to get a dowry.
Nor did I suppose I'd ever give one to a Witcher. Strange times these, wouldn't you say? Strange and sad.
Strange and sad? Did he just say his situation is sad? Yes, that is the atmosphere of the game. We don't need it spelled out. CD Projekt's writing is normally extraordinary, so this line really stuck out.
But let's not end on a teary note.
That's some damn fine advice, Tamara, so let me just finish by saying this quest is really, really good. So thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. There's going to be more Witcher 3 videos coming in the near future. I wish I had something clever to finish things off with, but I don't know. I'm running on fumes. This was a tough video. Tough and sad.